This is Conversations with Women in Sales, an award-winning podcast created by Barbara Giamanco, who hosted the first 67 episodes. Listen to interviews with amazing women about their journeys in their sales careers, often discussing sales leadership tips, ideas, and strategies. We aim to inspire women to consider a sales career and for some women to grow into sales leadership. Men, we appreciate your allyship. And now, your host, Lori Richardson.
A big thank you to our sponsor, Skillibrium, for their support of this podcast. Leave subjectivity aside with Skillibrium, where talent meets excellence and innovation to build the next generation of human-centric sales leaders and high-performing teams. I'm here today with Elitsa Zaimova, and she is sales director at Preply. Welcome, Elitsa. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you, Lori. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, we met in person in Boston, right?
That's right.
Yeah, it was at the Women in Sales breakfast, I think.
That was a women's sales breakfast, and we talked a lot about women in leadership, women in sales. We have a common passion here, so it's exciting to join on this podcast.
Yeah, and what's great about having you on today is that you have an incredible story that I am excited for you to share with us about change and risk taking and being brave, and also just some really good tips for women that might be considering sales, might be unhappy with where they're at. But first, let's go back and tell us a little bit about your beginnings. And you came to the U.S. but start at the beginning and give us a little background.
Sure, absolutely. As you mentioned, my name is Elitsa. I'm originally from Bulgaria. Moved to the U.S. back 2000. I was going to the U.S. back and forth since 2000. Moved to D.C. 2011, and I started at an NGO doing business development for them. But truly, I got my feet wet in sales once I joined Corporate Executive Board, or CEB, now Gartner. And that really changed my perspective about sales. It was not an easy job. Getting started in sales is always hard. Doing lots of cold calling is never easy, but it definitely teaches you resilience and it teaches you luck.
And that was really a time of cold calling. I remember.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you were in the
100
challenger
calls a day. I was, yes, mid-market challenger. It was really exciting because I went for the training myself, very sales challenger approach. Back in the days, we were very lucky because CEB had a fantastic training program for newbies in the sales business. So I was the fortunate one to go through a very robust sales training process, and then very fortunate enough to work on the challenger side, where I learned a lot about the industry and the business.
That's great. And then what happened after CEB?
After CEB, with my husband, we decided to take an opportunity and go live in Ukraine. He was offered opportunity with his job back then. And of course, I love a little adventure. We were younger back then. And I said, why not? What is the worst that could happen? We can learn a lot and always come back, right? We can always go back to the previous jobs and do what we do, but let's go and on a little adventure. And keep in mind, Lord, that was back in 2015, 2016, right? Ukraine was still quite developing and very different than what, was in 2021 and 2020.
Yes. Yeah. And so you were there, and what did you do at that point while you were in Ukraine?
Yeah, I started volunteering. I've done a lot of volunteering for especially women and girls going to school, and I was teaching English at that time. Then I joined a large law firm building their sales function, which was exciting. But as I mentioned to you, I listened to a podcast that talked about startups and how exciting the startup kind of environment is and how energetic and cool it is. So I got excited and I said, I want to be part of the startup community. How can I do that?
And so you reached out. You actually reached out, right?
Absolutely. And at that time I said, I'm done with sales. I want to do something slightly different. And so I found I was really passionate about edtech, right? So I decided, okay, I want to find a startup that I'm passionate about. So I sat down and thought, really, what am I passionate about? I love edtech, I love education, and we in sales know how to find organizations and people, right? That's the skill that takes Exactly, which is great. It's a life skill, right? So I found a couple of tech companies. One of them was Preply. It's a language learning platform. I found the CEO, Kirill, and I took a couple of lessons, right? Took a couple of language classes and contacted him and said, I want to give you feedback as a learner on your platform on how we can improve it and so on and so forth. And luckily for me, he responded back and exactly. And I had a meeting with him. We talked a little bit about the platform, the future plans, and I got really excited. And I said, Carol, how can I be part of this challenge, right? Unfortunate for me at that time, it was just a marketplace. So B2C organization, just going directly to learners. But obviously, sales background can be translated to many different things. He actually took a chance with me and let me manage his customer care team. So I started practicing on the customer care side. This gave me a good lesson that if you want something, don't be afraid, right? Write down, the first thing is write down what you're passionate about and don't be afraid to reach out to people, right? Don't be afraid to seek opportunities that oftentimes we deserve, but we don't really truly believe in ourselves, right? Especially us as women, Lori, we know a lot that we're hardworking. We put our head down, we work as hard as possible, and hope that, as you said it, somebody's going to tap us on the shoulder and say, you deserve this, rather than say, I deserve this. I'm going to go out there and get it.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. People don't always come by to tap you on the shoulder. So you have to be ready and you have to advocate for yourself, promote yourself. I was telling you when we were talking the other day that I did this also when I moved from Seattle to Boston. I needed a job. And at that time, sales was in person. There was no remote work. And I went to a company and offered to build an inside sales team. They had never done that. And it's funny because I saw the founder or the CEO a couple of weeks ago in Boston when I was back visiting. And he said, you cold emailed us. And I said, "Yeah, I did." And I proposed something they hadn't even thought about. And it turned out I had 4 great years with them. And then they were acquired. And it was a really, really great story. And I'm still in touch with many of those people, which is so awesome. So that's really good. But tell us about how you left Ukraine because this was before this was before the war. So it was what isn't a war story, but you were pregnant, right?
Absolutely. Yes. It was January 2022 for listeners. The war happened on February 24th, 2nd. I was 6 months pregnant. And at that time, we were working on scaling Preply. Preply was a Preply business. I started the B2B division at Preply. We'll talk about that later. But
So you have a team, right?
yes, we had a high growth team to manage. It was an exciting journey. And I'll never forget the call that I got from my husband at 8 p.m. in late January. I was still in the office. We did a lot of calls with the US. I was still in the office. He kept calling me. I was like, I'm going to call. Don't bother me. And he said, we have to evacuate. Like, we have to leave tomorrow morning. And and back then, right, like we never thought that a war would happen. We never thought that that would actually ever happen. So I was quite upset because next day I had a lot of meetings, right? A lot of calls. And I said, no, I have to take these calls. We can't leave, right? A little naive of me looking back in those days. So we had to evacuate very quickly. We never thought, again, like we thought, oh, we'll evacuate for a month and we'll come back. At the same time, I had to move apartments. So it was a little bit of a mess. We took a small suitcase each and went to Georgia, the country. Moved quite a lot. Luckily, we had a difference with, US, where I was working a lot in Barcelona. So I worked a lot during the night and moved, during the day. It was a process. But I definitely, once the war happened, it was a very difficult situation, personally and professionally, right? For organizations that had a lot of Ukrainians, and for me, that managing some Ukrainian team members and working with a lot of Ukrainians, it was definitely a huge challenge for us and a lot of lessons learned. But the biggest kind of 3 lessons back from then are like, first, the power of community. I think Preply's organization did a fantastic job building a community around the situation and making sure that we all share our stories, we all support each other. And when I say power of community, it's not just employees, but also our clients. We had a lot of clients being affected. So that kind of community taking care of each other really helped us overcome the stress of the situation. And second is oftentimes, especially us as women, we tend to be a little bit more emotional, right? And we rightfully we try to control a lot of different things. And rather, what helped me the most was think about focus on what you can control, right? We can't control the situation. We can't control the war. We can control our response to it. We can control how we care about each other, how we care about our team, how we care about our clients. And that kind of made me a little bit more powerful because once focus on what you can control, you can see the difference you make, and that helped. And the third thing really is looking at always the glass half full, right? And thinking how strong we women can be when stretched, right? Knowing that scaling a team, being 8 months pregnant when I moved back to Boston and saying, okay, we can deliver here, caring for my husband as well, who underwent the surgery. Right when you're stretched, you can understand how powerful and resilient we can be, and I think more women should not be afraid to test themselves and stretch themselves because we're powerful and we can manage it.
Yeah, that's incredible. You left a country, you came to the US, you were 8 months pregnant, and when you get to Boston, right? And it's just and you're running a sales team. So I most of us can't do one of those things at a time. To do it all, it's the power of women and as a mom now, that strength that you have as a mom as well. So how do women ask for what they deserve? Like we talked a little bit about it. Don't just wait for someone to tap you on the shoulder, but there's a lot more to that, right? You have to be confident.
Absolutely. I think one thing that we agree with that we do well is we actually work very hard, right? So we have to work hard to have a base to show that we deserve it, right? Like we have a track record. And I think we do. The issue that we have is that we're not outspoken about the track record that we have, all the hard work that we do. I see oftentimes, Lori, where men are a lot more confident and they talk about to everybody about all of the good things that they do. While with us, we just think that if we do hard work, people would notice. And I think the first thing we can do is advocate for all the hard work we do. Talk to people, tell them about all the hard work that you do, showing, right? And second is advocate for yourself. I think if we don't advocate for ourselves, we're the biggest advocates of ourselves, right? That's
Yeah.
the biggest believers in ourselves. We should know that if we do not advocate for ourselves, no one else will, right? Advocate for what you believe is right. Advocate for what you deserve. But again, you have to have that track record to show that you deserve it. So that's what I have learned, right? And I have seen a lot of women that I manage and a lot of women that I coach. It's not about the piece of building the track record, which they have, but it's the piece of advocating because of what you've achieved that you
Yeah.
deserve a certain right, a certain thing.
Do you think your parents instilled that in you? Where do you learn to speak up and not feel like it's bragging? People say, "Oh, don't," especially to women. We were told, "Don't brag." But some people were raised differently. I wasn't, unfortunately. My dad was all about don't rock the boat, don't make waves, don't stand out. But he did that to my brothers as well. It wasn't just a girl thing. But I wonder if your parents were any different.
Yeah, my parents were always, they taught me, you're the biggest advocate of yourself. You have to believe in yourself. I do have to say that I'm lucky that my husband is also I share a lot of ideas with him. He's my champion as well. And that helps, right? Like bouncing back ideas. I do also have a lot of mentors along the way that have helped me. But ultimately, I have understood, right? Hey, it never hurts to ask, right? It's always about how you ask. And be in sales, right? Like we can take notes. It's okay.
Yeah.
And the notes are exciting because the
Right.
no starts a conversation, as Chris Bossy says a lot.
Yeah.
The no gives you an opportunity to be curious and understand the reason behind the no and then dig deeper. So I think that's something that I've learned honestly from sales. And hopefully a lot of women that are not sure about their career in sales really can teach you life skills. And I've understood that, right? And it's an exciting career as an individual contributor as well as a leader, but it gives you also life skills that you can implement anywhere else in life.
Yeah. If you want to go on within an organization and rise to the top, or if you end up starting your own thing, those sales skills, you and I were talking about how much we both love sales. And I love that about you. I remember when we were talking in Boston, you were saying, I love sales so much. And I said, I love sales so much. It's really great because it's a game changer career. It's gotten women like me out of poverty. It's gotten women to be able to raise their families if they're single parents or contribute as a couple. It's just such an amazing career and it allows you flexibility and just so many other options. You can go
Absolutely.
all sorts of different career paths, right?
Absolutely, Lori. And when I think about when I was an individual contributor, how I viewed sales is I always thought of myself as an entrepreneur with resources, right?
Yeah.
Because you have a clear goal. And I love that, right? Here is your goal. here are the resources, go. And then here is your territory. And then you get to build a strategy. You get to decide how you get to that path with different, right? Obviously with different tools, with different strategies and approaches, with support from your peers. And I thought that was fantastic. And then as a sales leader, I always think like we get rewarded twice, because the first reward you get is seeing this young sales women or men growing within the organization, right? Like closing their first deal, getting that excitement, to closing really big deals, to getting right to growing within the organization is very exciting. But additionally, also seeing the impact we have on the client side, because we are so close to the client, even as a leader, you still join those important calls. You still sit on those calls. You still understand, hey, we're making a difference. So I that's why I love the sales leadership as much, because I feel like we're rewarded twice, seeing the team grow and develop, as well as seeing the impact that we make. I think it's a unique opportunity, and more women should seek those opportunities, because back in the days when I was starting, we thought of sales, it's a more male dominated. It's about convincing people to buy things that I don't need. And it's really not that. It's a lot of care. It's a lot of strategy. It's a lot of listening. And I think we're really good at that.
Yeah. Creativity, communication, collaboration. So things we're
Absolutely.
good at. Yeah.
Absolutely. Listening, right? If you don't listen and you're not curious, I do think that the biggest thing that helped me is that curiosity. I was always so curious about the prospect side. How can we support them? How can we, right, unlock their potential with what we have to offer? And then curious about how we can make even our product better to fit into that product, into the market. That curiosity helped me grow, helped me be excited about sales. I looked at it as a
Yeah.
piece of puzzle. Every day you have to open different puzzle. It's exciting. And if more women think about sales in that way, I think that we'll have a lot more women in sales, which we need more
Yes.
women in sales, right?
Yes. And we were talking about how you have mentored women in Eastern Europe, and as you can do, that's a great thing as well.
Absolutely. And I have to say, Lori, one of the things that I learned while scaling Preply Business, and I did mention to you just a side story, maybe the listeners would enjoy that. When I joined Preply back then, I really thought I'm done with sales. And I know a lot of women go through that as well that I've been speaking. They're like, okay, I've done sales. I'm good. I want something else, maybe product management, right? So I went through that. I went through different careers at Preply. And ultimately, subconsciously, I always looked for starting the B2B department Preply, and kind of pitched the idea to the CEO several times. And at that time, obviously, he was very focused on building the best B2C platform, but he wanted to focus on that. And then I realized that just pitching it is not enough. I have to show him that there's potential. So we found a design partners that were willing to put money and build the solution with us. So I took their money without the CEO knowing. And I said, okay, pay us and we'll build it for you. And I went to the CEO and I said, I have good news and bad news. The good news is we have X amount of money in our bank account. And the bad news is that we have to build a B2B, right? And I realized, and at that time, he was like, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. So I realized that if you really want something, you have to not just share, hey, let's do this, but show them, right? Be passionate about it and start building it, right? Start building it and show them that there is like potential. And that was exciting. Getting the yes from the CEO and then building Practice Business was really, really exciting. But I realized early on that if I were just to get started and show, that will take me a long way.
Yeah, it's a matter of showing and not just saying. There are people who want to be promoted right away, or they want different things to happen in a company. And if you can show a business case like you did and show the value for the leaders of the company, you're more apt to do it. Because I know with my job where I pitched the CEO and built an inside sales team, I also pitched them later on. About 3 years later, I pitched the idea of building a corporate university. And we had all these college graduates that were struggling with what they were saying and writing. And so we modeled it off of a bigger company, and I wrote a proposal and they loved it. So the worst they could do, like you
That's
said, is they
amazing.
could say no. They could have
Yeah,
said, no, we're not going to do that. And as long as you don't take that personally, I think that's the big thing is it didn't reflect me, but it's more why then I'd want to learn, what don't you like about the idea? What would you like to see? And that's what we can do with their
absolutely.
buyers too, right?
Absolutely. And I love that story, Lori. And hopefully these stories can motivate more women to not be afraid and speak up. And we have such good ideas. Like I've heard so many amazing ideas from women when I go on business trips and meet more B2B leaders. And we just speaking up, I think we can create a lot of value for ourselves and the organizations we work at.
That's great. I think I'm going to call this episode Speak Up after
That's
time.
great.
Yeah.
I like
Any
it.
book recommendation or podcasts that you would
Yeah,
suggest? How do you learn?
I do love podcasts. I have to say I'm a mom of two and I listen to a lot of books. I don't have much of the privilege of sitting and reading. So I do love podcasts. Again, Lori, when I was living back in Ukraine, actually, I was lucky enough to find your podcast. So I was a big fan back then and listening to women
Nice.
in business, you can resonate a lot, right? Like we go through a similar process. So knowing that you're not alone. So if for any woman that a little bit struggles with things on her own, just your podcast is, for me, it really helped me understand, okay, I'm not alone with this. Other women are going through that. Here's how they're overcoming it. How can I find my way out? It really helped me. I listen to a lot of podcasts in sales because I'm passionate about, obviously, about the industry. I like the 30 minutes to
President
President's
Club.
Club.
Yeah.
Those guys do a great job. I found it to be very straightforward. So for somebody who is an account executive or an SDR that is looking for practical tips, I like that. I would share it a lot with my team. And the last podcast I would share is Founders. I love that podcast. It's kind of like that the person breaks down really important autobiographies of entrepreneurs and shares them. I'm advisor to a couple of early on startups. I work with the founders that are very technical and they need a little bit more of the sales skills, but that kind of helped me understand like how the best entrepreneurs out there build organizations they built. And I think we can always resonate back to sales. And we see that a lot of those leaders also had a sales mindset and sales is everywhere.
Yeah. And also, people should consider building their brand in the coming year. In 2025, people go online to look up who they should reach out to. And if you're up to date on LinkedIn and you show the value that you bring and you post periodically so that people know that you're out there, they're more apt to trust you and reach out and engage with you. Do you agree?
100%. Absolutely, Lori. I feel like LinkedIn today, in today's world, especially in sales, it's more like your resume, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes I talk to other sales leaders and resumes are secondhanded, right? If you don't have a very well-designed LinkedIn and you're in sales, I always personally like question, okay, how credible is this person? Because a lot of the work that we do is on LinkedIn, right? A lot of our buyers are in LinkedIn, unless it's in a very different region, right? That I'm not familiar with. Even though Prep is global, we work in a lot in EMEA and North America, and LinkedIn is the major tool globally. I think if you don't have that brand built, then it's going to be really difficult, right? Like for the person. So for any listeners here, make sure that after this, you have a professional photo, you have a professional page, post regularly. Right now, you have so many tools. You have ChatGPT that can help you, right? It doesn't take much time.
Yeah.
Um,
And
you
if
can
you're in
build a fantastic
sales,
brand.
show the benefits of your efforts. If
Absolutely.
you've
Great.
maybe you haven't made President's Club, but what percentage were you above quota? Share some
Exactly.
things that really show that you understand that it's a metrics driven career and show your successes.
Right. Yes. 100%. I always call it like back then when we hired quite a lot of people at prep training scale very quickly. And I always talked to HR that we looked at result driven, right? Resumes. Like I was responsible for X, Y, and Z. Okay, that's great. What have you done as a result of it is important. But now with ChatGPT, it's difficult to check, right? A lot of people use ChatGPT to create their specific resumes, which is smart for specific jobs. So it's even more challenging now, right, to hire somebody by resume. That's why I think
Right.
having a very powerful LinkedIn profile as a sales person or somebody who wants to enter the world of sales is really important.
Yeah. Maybe do some video, just differentiate yourself to stand out. So that's great. Well,
Absolutely.
it's been such a pleasure having you on, Elisa. Thank you so much. And
Thank you, Laurie.
I'm just curious to watch your career as it continues to grow and wish you the very best. And thank you for all the work you do mentoring others.
Thank you, Laurie. It's been a pleasure being part of this podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conversations with Women in Sales. You can find all of our episodes at womensalespros.com/podcast. Help us spread the word and let's change the face of B2B sales.